lesson 07 and 08, which perimeter and area. As I'm sure you can tell by my voice, I am not feeling the best today, so I'm going to do my best to get through this video. So please bear with me if I sound funny or I cough or um, a little bit hard to understand. I will do my best to make it clear. First off, you need to pause the video and make sure you write these formulas down. P is your perimeter. So like under the rectangle, the perimeter is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. A stands for area. Area is the length times the width. Now, on a square, I kind of, put the rectangle and the square together because really you can use the same formulas for a square that you do for a rectangle. It's just the length and the width are the same in a square, because in a square all 4 sides are the same. So if you just wanted to learn the formulas for the rectangle and not worry about the square, you can certainly do that because you're going to get the same results. Okay, in a triangle, the perimeter is you just add up all the sides. And then your area is your base times your height. Or excuse me, I didn't put that in there. 1/2 the base times the height. Let me fix that. Can y'all see that? Area is equal to 1/2 the base times the height. I'm sorry, I did not put that in there the first time. You can think of that as 0.5, or you can think of that base times height divided by 2. All the same thing, okay? Parallelogram. Everybody remember what a parallelogram looks like? It kind of looks like this. It's just a square or a rectangle leaning over, okay? Again, to find the perimeter, you're just going to add up all the 4 sides, okay? And your area is your base times your height. Again, we're going to talk about it when we look at these examples, base and height. Remember, base and height, like in the triangle and the parallelogram, have to be making a right angle with one another. A circle, the perimeter is called the circumference. Circumference is the distance around the circle, just like the perimeter is the distance around the outside of the object. The area is the amount of space inside. In a circle, we call that the circumference. And there's 2 different formulas. You can memorize them both, or you can just memorize one. It doesn't matter. But the circumference is 2 times pi times r, or pi times the diameter. Either one will work. You're going to get the same answer. And the area is pi times the radius squared. Okay? Now again, on these perimeters, if you don't want to memorize the formulas for perimeters, what can you do? You can just add up all the sides. That's the exact same thing, just adding up the sides. All right, one more thing before we get on working into some problems. I want to make sure you remember, area is always in the units to the second power, okay? Whatever it may be. It may be meters squared, feet squared, inches squared, okay? Whatever it is, it's units to the second power. Perimeter is just the units. It may be meters, feet, inches, yards, whatever. But area is always measured in units, whatever your units are, to the second power. Okay, so let's look at a few examples here. Here's my first one. This is a rectangle. I need to find my perimeter and my area. And I do want you writing the formula every time, because that will help you learn these formulas. Now, again, on the perimeter, remember I told you can use the formula 2 times the length plus 2 times the width, or you can simply just add up all 4 sides, length plus width plus length plus width. It's the exact same thing. So my perimeter, if I'm using my formula, is 2 times my length. Now the question I always get is which one's my length and which one's my width? Well, it doesn't really matter. Okay, you're going to get the same thing. I always think of this longer side as my length, but again, it's totally irrelevant. Really doesn't matter. You can call them either way. So it's 2 times 14 plus 2 times my width, which is 5. Now, order of operations tells me that I've got to do my multiplication first. So 2 times 14 is 28, and I forgot to say that you can have a calculator for this section. And 2 times 5 is 10, and then 28 plus 10 is 38. So, and then don't forget to label it. Perimeter is just in my units, so it's 38 inches. Area of a rectangle is the length times the width. So my area is equal to 14 times 5, and you can plug that into your calculator or you can work it out. And you see that 14 times 5 is 70. So my area is 70 inches squared. Okay, we may say square inches, or you can say inches squared. Okay, that's a rectangle. Now, look at the next one. We've got a square. You can use the formulas for the square, like I told you, or again, you can use the formulas for a rectangle. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the exact same thing. If I were to use the ones for the rectangle, my length and my width would both be 6, because in the square, all the sides are the same. If you want to memorize the square ones, that's fine. The perimeter was just 4 times the side. So my perimeter is 4 times 6. So my perimeter is 24 meters. Don't forget to label your answers. Area of a square is the side to the second power, or length times width, because they're the same this time. So my area is equal to 6 to the second power, or 36 meters squared. Okay, that's my square. Now, parallelogram. Remember we talked about in my parallelogram that my area, well, let's do, we got to have some more information on this one to be able to do our perimeter, because my perimeter is the distance around the outside. Is that 7 on the outside? No. So let's just say that that's 8 yards. So to find my perimeter, I just have to add up all my sides. And I know if this is 9 down here, then this one has to be 9, and this one has to be 8. So again, you could do 2 times, I hate to say my length and my width because that's not really what it is. So we're just going to add up our sides. We're going to say 9 plus 8 plus 9 plus 8. So my perimeter is equal to, and just plugging that into my calculator, you get 34 yards. Okay, just added up my sides, because remember, perimeter is the distance around the outside. Area of my parallelogram, remember a parallelogram is just a rectangle or a square leaning over, is base times the height. Okay, remember what I said in the beginning. Base and height have to make a right angle. What you're going to be looking for is the two sides. When you have this little square right here, remember that indicates the right angle. So those are the ones that I'm going to multiply together. So my base is 9, it's down here on the bottom, and my height, how tall it is when it makes that right angle, is really 7. So 9 times 7 is 63 yards squared. Okay, and it just occurred to me that maybe I ought to explain to y'all why is area in units squared and perimeters not, because this is really like 9 yards times 7 yards. So 9 times 7 is my 63, and yards times yards is yards to the second power. Up here, that's just adding. So that doesn't become to the second power when I'm adding. It's just going to become 34 yards. So maybe that'll help y'all remember why is that not, why is area squared and perimeter is not. All right, let's look at a triangle. All right, on this triangle, again, my perimeter, if you look back at your formulas, you're just going to add up your 3 sides. So my perimeter of this one's just 3 plus 4 plus 5. So my perimeter is equal to 12 meters. Okay, the area of a triangle is 1/2 the base times the height. The area is 1/2. Remember, your base and your height, you're looking for the two that make that right angle with each other. So in this case is 3 times 4. So I have 1/2 times 12. Excuse me. And 1/2 times 12 is going to be what? 6 meters squared. Because remember that 1/2, you can make it 0.5 if you want to put it in your calculator. You would just do 0.5 times 12. All right, so that's 6 meters squared. All right, let me change colors so you can kind of differentiate between the two over here. All right, on this triangle, perimeter again is just going to be 13 plus 13 plus 13. So my perimeter is going to be what? 39 inches. Area equals 1/2 base times height. So my area is equal to 1/2. Again, I'm looking for the two that make that right angle. So that's the 8 and the 13. 1/2 times 8 times 13. So in my calculator, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to say for 1/2, you remember the decimal equivalent for 1/2 is 0.5. So I'm going to do 0.5 times 8 times 13 is equal to 52. So I'm going to just write it up here. My area is equal to 52 inches squared. Okay? So that was my area for that triangle. Okay? So just remember that base and that height on a triangle and a parallelogram have to be making a right angle with one another. All right, let's look at a circle. Now, I've got two different circles up here because I want to make sure everybody understands and remembers that when it goes halfway from the center to the side, that is a radius. When it goes all the way across, that is your diameter. And then remember your relationship between your radius and your diameter. Your diameter is twice the radius. Diameter is equal to 2 times the radius, or the radius is equal to the diameter divided by 2. So again, you can use either one of those formulas for the circumference. Remember, the circumference is like the perimeter. It's the distance around the outside of the circle. If I started walking on one point of the circle and walked all the way back around to that point again, how far would I walk? So I have my circumference, and this one I have a radius, so I'm going to use that formula. Again, if you just want to memorize one formula, just convert your radius to a diameter, your diameter to a radius, because remember their relationship. Radius is half a diameter. But on this one I'm given a radius, so I'm just going to use 2 pi r. So my circumference is equal to 2 times, and we'll put in 3.14. You may have a calculator that has a pi button, and that's fine. So your rounding may end up a little different than mine if I just use 3.14, and that's okay too. I'll work it both ways. And my radius in this problem is 4. So plugging that all in, I have 2 times 3.14 times 4. And we'll just say we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So that's going to be 25.12 kilometers. Okay? Area of a circle is pi times the radius squared. So my area is equal to 3.14 times my radius, which is 4 to the second power. All right, not to confuse you, but I'm going to try to move that right up here. So that's area is equal to 3.14 times 16. Plugging that into my calculator, 3.14 times 16. Rounded to the nearest hundredth, which is 2 decimal places, is going to be 50.24 kilometers squared. Okay? Now, if you don't have all that written down yet, pause the video and write it down, because I'm going to have to erase it to have room to do this other problem. Okay? So make sure you have that copied down. All right, now looking at this other one over here, let's go ahead and erase all of that so it doesn't get confusing. Again, I'm going to do my circumference. In this case, I have a diameter, so I'm going to use the formula pi times d. Again, I could use the radius and just take half of 15, and you could do 15 divided by 2 on your calculator, and you're going to see that you get 7.5. So it would be the same thing. So pi is 3.14 times my diameter, which is 15. Plugging that into my calculator and rounding to the nearest hundredth, I get 47.1. You could put a 0 if you wanted to. It's the same thing. Feet. Again, because it's like the perimeter, I don't have to, it's not units squared, it's just the unit on the circumference. The area for that triangle is pi times the radius squared. So my area is equal to pi, 3.14, times my radius. Remember, we talked about that this is a diameter, so it's not 15 squared. The radius is just going to be what? Half of that. So half of 15, you could do that on your calculator, is 7.5, and I need that to the second power. So plugging that in, I have 3.14 times 7.5 to the second power means what? 7.5 times 7.5 is 56.25. And then I'm going to multiply that times 3.14. And if I round to the nearest hundredth, I get 176.63. Remember, it's going to be units to the second power because it's area. So it's 176.63 feet squared. Okay? So really all you're doing is you got to know those formulas, and you're doing what I call plug and chug. You're plugging in the numbers and chugging out the answer. Now, we're also going to do some composite figures. And what I mean by a composite figure is a figure made up of several different shapes. I don't have a name for this shape. I don't know how to find the perimeter or the area of this shape in and of itself. But I can break it up into two shapes that I do know how to find the area of, or the perimeter of. I've got half a circle up here, and then down here at the bottom, I've got a rectangle. So I can find the perimeter of each one of those shapes and then add them together. Okay? And then same thing with the area. Now let's talk about the perimeter first. And I'll do the bottom part down here. Now let's think about this. Do I really, if I want to know the distance around the outside of this shape, okay, I just want to know the distance around the outside. So if I started walking right here, how far did I walk? Well, because it's a rectangle, I know that that's also 8 feet, so I walked 8. Walked from here to here. Now I walked to there. I know that that's 4 feet. And I walk from here to here. I know that that's 8. Now I've got to do this distance. Well, if that's half a circle, okay, can I find the circumference of that circle and then divide it by 2? Yes. Okay, so that's going to give me that distance from here to here. So the circumference of that circle is what? How do I find the circumference? Pi times, in this case, I'm given what? What goes all the way through. So I'm given the diameter. So I can use that formula again. You could use 2 pi r. So the circumference is equal to 3.14. You see how that's the diameter of the circle? If my circle, if I continued it on, if this is my circle, it could continue on like that. But because I only have half of it, I'm only going to need half of the circumference. So pi times the diameter, let me go back to my orange so I don't confuse you. My diameter in this case is 4. So I have 3.14 times 4 equals 12.56. But do I need the whole circumference? No, because I only have half the circle. So I'm going to take that 12.56 and divide it by 2, doing that on my calculator. I get 6.28. So if I walked around the whole thing, again, I've got 8, 4, 8, and then 6.28. Plugging those into my calculator, 8 plus 4 plus 8 plus 6.28, and I get that my perimeter is equal to 26.28 feet. So when you get a composite figure like this, it's a matter of just breaking it down into the pieces that you know you can find, that you can solve. So that's my perimeter. All right, again, make sure you can copy this down. Pause the video if you need to continue writing, because I'm going to erase this to have room to do the area. If it doesn't freeze up on me, so maybe it froze up on me. Here we go. Erase all this. I'll put those numbers back on there so we can talk about area. So that was circumference. Circumference was the distance around the outside. Okay? So this was 8 feet, and this was 4 feet. Now, area is the amount of space inside. So I want to know how much space is in here, and then I want to add it to how much space is in there. Well, this is a rectangle. The area of the rectangle is just length times width. So I have 4 times 8. So that area is 32 feet squared. So maybe let me erase this part, and we can write that in there. This is 32 feet squared. Now up here I've got what? Half a circle. So can I find the area of the whole circle? Because remember, if I continued that on, I'd have the whole circle, but I just have half of it. So I can find the area of the whole circle and divide it by 2. Remember, the area of the circle is pi times the radius squared. So area is equal to 3.14 times, if this, what is this going to be, the diameter or the radius? If it goes all the way across, it is the diameter. And the radius, I need the radius for my formula though, but remember the radius is half the diameter. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I have 2 to the second power. So I have 3.14 times 2 to the second power, which is 4. Plugging that into my calculator, I get area is equal to 12.56 feet squared. But am I done? Have I found the area of this part yet? No, because I just need half of it. So I'm going to divide that by 2. So 12.56 divided by 2 is 6.28 feet squared. Can you read that? So if this part up here is 6.28 feet squared, then to find the area of the whole thing, I'm going to add my 32 plus my 6.28. Plugging that into your calculator, you're going to see that you get 38.28 feet squared. I'm sorry, I wish that was, let me try that again where it'll be a little bit neater for you. I'm sorry that that's so messy. Adding those together, the area is going to equal to 32 plus 6.28. So that's going to be what? 38.28 feet squared for my area. Okay? So again, on these composite figures, it's just a matter of breaking them down. Now on this particular problem, notice that half my circumference and half my area came out to be the same. That just happened on this one because of that 4. That's not always going to happen, so don't think, they got to come out the same. Not necessarily. All right, have a great night, and I will see you tomorrow.